Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. We make Chris Skinner's Countryside podcast, and we've got something very exciting to share with you. We have a new service that's being launched, and it's called Spoken Stories.
Spoken Stories is all about recording the voices and memories of your loved ones in outstanding quality, so they can be enjoyed for generations to come. For example, you know the story that Grandma tells that everyone in the family has heard before. Well, Spoken Stories is about getting those stories down and preserving them for your family history. Spoken Stories is about gifting someone the time to capture these personalities and unique voices.
We record your loved ones' tales, whether it's their whole life story so far or something more specific like a life-changing event. It is a gorgeous experience, and what you're left with is a beautiful monologue that really captures the essence of that person.
Think of it like an audio portrait, and take a listen to a snippet of this one from Diane's spoken story, recorded in her beautiful garden.
I was born in 1951 at Newmarket, and unfortunately I didn't see Mum for a year. I was looked after by a lovely nurse called Diane, my name, because my mum had TB when I was born. And so my mother never worked because with her problem with her, lungs, she had to go and have it sort of pumped up every so often. She used to do a lot of dressmaking, so she always made our clothes years ago. But yeah, she was a lovely mum, yeah, and Dad as well, yeah. That's very nice childhood I had, yeah, very nice. Yeah. I got married February the 16th, 1974. The weather was gorgeous. I ended up having putting a big sort of T-shirt under my wedding dress I didn't need. I had a lovely one of those transparent umbrellas in case it rained, and it was just a beautiful day. I think I'm always sort of quite cheerful. I mean, if I go down the Luke and deliver some eggs to somebody, I'll meet somebody and chat, and then Paul say, "Where have you been?" I said, "I've been chatting to people." That's just my way. That's just how I am. We've always lived here. We had this built in 1974. They put the footings down in February and we moved in the August. Years ago, I used to go around the village on a bike, and when I had Ian, he'd sit on the back. We live in a lovely area. We've got lovely neighbours. They help us all out, which you all do with neighbours, and that's very, very nice. And as I said to Paul, I'm hoping we can keep this place on until, well, I don't want to move from here until I go out in a brown box. I hope that's not too soon.
If you'd like more information about Spoken Stories and to take advantage of our special introductory offer, you can head to www.soundyard.org/spoken stories.
And keep listening after this episode with Chris, and you'll hear another example of a spoken story. It's a view of the world from a 6-year-old.
It's a bright and breezy day here at High Ash Farm, and it's a special day to celebrate our 52nd Countryside podcast. In other words, it's our first birthday. I'm asking my first question. It's all practicing the Norfolk motto of do different, because each week I answer questions from our wonderful podcast followers. And it's a kind of rural riddle which I've recorded way out in the middle of a very large arable field here at High Ash Farm. Now, the contributor for the sound has got a conundrum. Here's the conundrum. Today, Sunday, the 1st of September, I'm safe. Why should I be worried tomorrow, the 2nd of September? And why shouldn't I be worried tomorrow, the 2nd of September? So if you think you can crack the kind of conundrum, then send your answers into Soundyard. Sophie and Anna, who each week make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, and I'll answer, I'll give any correct and incorrect answers on next Sunday's podcast, just a week away. So do have some fun with this sound. It's a bit of a head scratcher, and remember, it was quite windy just half an hour ago when I recorded this sound. So here it comes.
Chris Skinner's Countryside Podcast with Matthew Gudgeon.
It's a warm day. It's now September, and Chris Skinner, here we are in the woods, in the farm, and you're grinning from ear to ear.
I certainly am, Matthew. This is my third attempt over the recent weeks to introduce you to one of our woodland butterflies. It's called a speckled wood, and to me they're very demure, very, very beautiful as well. Spend most of their life in dark woodland like this, with little sunny glades. Trees have fallen over where we're standing over the years and let the lovely sunlight today and the warmth in on the woodland floor. And only 3 feet from us is a beautiful speckled wood. And it's a girl.
There she goes.
Where? She
I think
disappeared.
she's just disappeared off, but we had a good look at her, only a few feet away.
Yes, and it's a female, and the markings, how I knew that, the markings on the female are far more distinct than they are on the male, which is really unusual. A kind of a dusky chocolate brown upper surface on the wings, tiny little yellowish eyes with a little dark centre to them, and I call them demure, but their behaviour is anything but, because they're on kind of guard duty the whole time. And any other butterflies, and there's some small whites flying behind us, and they're good lures for the speckled wood butterfly, because when they're flying out, suddenly they'll be attacked by this diminutive little brown butterfly. Doesn't look anything at all, and they are territorial. In other words, get off my land.
And they don't hold back.
No, they absolutely don't. They really go at it full belt. So unusual to find a butterfly species in woodland, and yet they thrive. And right through this old woodland, right from the early 1900s, well over 100 years ago, shooting rides were cut through, and it lets the sun in here, and that enabled shooting parties to be able to go through and beat in the bushes and get the pheasants, partridges and woodcock all out that lived in this woodland. And so I've kept those open. There are no horse rides here at the farm. And that's Rat, by the way, our demented terrier, and he's making a contribution from the other side of the bramble patch where that speckled wood was on. Yeah. So speckled woods are really interesting, though.
Not the biggest butterfly.
No, only about 1.5 inches, I suppose, about 35 mil wingspan. The males have the same patterning on the top side of the wings when the wings are open, and she was just sunbathing in front of us. It's a lovely sight, but it's much more blurred, and whereas the female, the markings are really distinct. She doesn't necessarily lay her eggs or her brood in the woodland. It'll often be around the perimeter of the woodland, although the woodland here is a little bit unusual because the tracks have grass on them. And grass is the kind of food plant for her caterpillars. So she'll lay her eggs on things like cooch, or another name for it, as we call it in Norfolk, is twitch as well. It's a rhizome grass, and it's very drought resistant. And she lays her eggs on that. The eggs hatch out, pupate, and before that, as caterpillar form, they actually eat the grass as their plant food. So she'll use various species of grass, cooch the main one, sometimes cocksfoot as well, and they're absolutely thriving. There's perhaps a couple of dozen pairs in this large area of woodland, and I come across them most days, but I'd been itching to get you up close to one for the first time. They've been rather elusive this summer because the weather's been variable, as it has been for all the butterfly species. But there we are, a lovely introduction to one of my favourite butterflies. Diminutive, demure, but very passionate about their own patch. And when you stand here, as the sun goes round, it will illuminate the sides of different trees, and very conveniently there's another small white butterfly flirting in the next sun patch halfway down the hill there. So what I'm watching out for is one of these very territorial male speckled woods to come out and challenge it. And as you said, they don't hang back, so I just love them to bits. So there we are, lovely introduction to this week's 52nd podcast. It's our birthday, Matthew.
Oh, happy first birthday.
Yes, number one. And we've had a lovely little surprise package from Mr. Frisky. Mr. Frisky has bought some cakes for Sophie and Anna and some flowers as well, some treats for Rat too. So he's done the whole works, and a lovely card for you and I, especially from Mr. Frisky, and also one from the bees at the farm to say thank you very much for the year's work that we've done and providing the pollen and nectar for all us bees at High Ash Farm. We love it here. And the card's from my first card ever from Insect. So, yes, so we're hitting all the right spots. So thank you, Mr. Frisky. That's really very, very welcome.
We'll answer more of your emails later on, and it's High Ash Farm for our Countryside podcast. Lots more still to come on this very warm day. Can't believe it's already September, but
yes,
very sultry.
It is. It's humid, isn't it? And we're really suffering from a lack of rain in the eastern counties, although anybody listening over in the West Country will be scratching their head and say they've lost the plot over in the east, but really we've only had about 18 millimetres in the whole month of August, 13 of which was last Saturday, and that's what we call a pound a drop, that rain, and it just helped to alleviate the brownness on the pastures, and it's all coming through fresh and verdant green.
And I've made my acquaintance, albeit a brief one, with a speckled wood.
Yes, there you are. Another ambition fulfilled.
The ducks at High Ash Farm going in to roost for an evening. Hey everyone, it's Matthew here, and if you've been enjoying our Countryside podcasts, we've got a small favour to ask.
Yes, Matthew. What we're going to do is to ask for a small donation to help run the podcast, and any surplus goes for conservation at High Ash Farm here. And so it's really important. We'd both love to keep the podcast going, and that duck agrees with me, I think.
Well, it's straightforward to donate. You can make a one-off donation or set up a small monthly contribution, and the address is highashfarm.com/podcast.
We're hugely grateful for any support. It means we can keep sharing the stories of the countryside, which I love doing each week, but it's that small amount of costs we need to cover. So thank you very much in advance.
Rat is enjoying the sunshine today, but we're just gone into a bit of shade. Sycamore trees, the subject of a question that we had, in fact, last week. Vicky wanted to know about mildew on oak tree leaves, but also she said in a part of the question that we didn't get to, she's a bit concerned about sycamores looking a little bit on the dead side.
Yes, to say the least. Well, I mentioned earlier in the podcast that East Anglia in the eastern counties has been bereft of rain at this time of the year. This is a large area of woodland that we're standing in. Masses and masses of sycamore trees, which is a pioneering and introduced species here in the UK. Some of them are very large indeed. The one we're standing near is perhaps 70 feet tall. Some lower down in the woodland where the soil is better, well over 30 metres, so well over 100 feet. Sycamore was introduced as a shade tree, kind of member of the maple family. If you look at the leaves are very close to the symbol of Canada on the Canadian flag, that maple leaf symbol. And it's all the maples really have a lot of sugar in the bark and in the sap, and it's an early tree to come into leaf as well early in the year, so the sap rises, and normally it doesn't attract attention from one of our many species of mammals. So we're just going to walk in through the brambles here. We'll just be careful.
My insurance is fully paid up for this.
Excellent. That's what we need to hear. Rats ambling off into the distance.
He loves this, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. It's his favourite part of the week. Let's just have a look round and just see if we can see any other candidates. Well, we are right by one. So here is a sycamore trunk. It's about 4 inches thick, and it extends up perhaps 25 feet above our heads. And you can see near the bottom here, the bark has been nibbled in no uncertain way. It's been stripped off. Now, that could be deer, because it's still within 3 feet of ground level, but it hasn't completely circled the tree. But when we look up, let me just move these twigs out of the way a bit. When we look up to 5 feet high,
The bark has come off there as well.
completely
All the way
stripped
up.
all the way up to the top. And that's where your brown sycamore leaves. And once you stand away, look across the other side of the track there, you'll see all those sycamores have the same brown tops on them. The leaves have shriveled, died, because the sap has been cut off, quite simply because the bark translocates moisture and dissolved minerals all the way up the trunk on the outside, and the centre of the trunk actually does the support. So the bark is like your skin. It's absolutely crucial to the health and well-being of the tree. And as we look up it to the top, the whole top of it has been stripped, as though somebody's got a penknife and peeled every shred of bark off all the way round. That's curtains for that. Although this is a kind of coppiced area of sycamore here, and it's an old tree that fell down, and it's got 7 small sycamore trees coming off it. Now that's sort of controversial in a way, because grey squirrels, which is what's caused this, is an introduced species, but they were introduced really deliberately. There was 20 or 30 introductions in the middle 19th century, the middle 1800s in other words, and even they became quite popular. I think it was in 1911 the Duke of Bedfordshire was invited to a wedding in County Down, I think it was in Ireland, and as a wedding present he bought a picnic basket for the bride. Inside the picnic basket, I hope conservationists are not listening to this, was a dozen grey squirrels. They had the wedding feast on the lawn. The basket was left in the centre of the lawn until festivities had finished, and then the basket was open in front of all the guests, and a dozen or so grey squirrels scampered off into the nearby woodland, and that's how the squirrels got to Ireland as a wedding present. And so, everybody's kind of sort of wishing that hadn't happened.
But they push out the reds, don't they?
They do, in a way. Well, a couple of factors. They're about twice the weight of a red squirrel. Red squirrel's quite diminutive, little tufts of hair on the tops of their ears, and they certainly don't bark trees like the grey squirrel. And grey squirrel, when they were introduced, they brought a squirrel pox with them, which is meant to infect red squirrels as well. Now, the story gets a bit grey at this point, excuse the pun, because some of the areas where red squirrels were very frequent and greys hadn't yet arrived, 15 to 20 years elapsed from the disappearance of red squirrels to the introduction of the grey. So something was already starting to change. But in 1931, the government brought out a kind of anti-squirrel campaign. And in 1931, gamekeepers and farmers and anybody who could track them was paid 1 shilling per tail for grey squirrels. So you'd obviously shot them, cut the tails off and posted them off, and you'd got your shilling. And when it finished in 1935, the rate had gone up to 2 shillings per squirrel.
It didn't work.
No, because some gamekeepers got very clever, and instead of shooting the grey squirrels, country people make you laugh sometimes, or they do me. They caught and trapped grey squirrels, cut off their tails and set them free again, in the hope that the progeny would bring in an income in the future. Oh dear. So ever since then, grey squirrels have caused a problem for foresters, particularly in newly planted youthful trees. And I'm now going to get you to hop back in the truck because they've done further damage here at High Ash Farm, which is now a little bit worrying. It's only to drive about a quarter of a mile into an area of successional woodland, so we will go and have a quick look at that. We'll hop back in the truck. Mind those brambles.
Well, we're in the farm truck and Rat's enjoying the view, but we're looking over towards this very new woodland here.
Yes, Matthew, this has been here around 20 years. We call it successional woodland, and it's an area of the farm that I've now fallen in love with. I think it's my favourite spot within a square mile, if you could have one, because it just tells me what the countryside would look like without humans around. And everything that you can see here, there's 5 acres, 2 hectares of it, has been planted naturally. No hand help from me whatsoever or anybody else, and just little patches of oak trees, Scots pine where seed is blown in, a few sweet chestnut trees here and there. But the main tree species by far, there's probably 4,000 or 5,000 oaks on here, and quite dense in places and good 20 feet high, so they've managed to grow 1 foot a year. But as we look across, so we're quite high up, looking down into the woodland, you can see perhaps 20 or 30 beautiful young oaks, chocolate brown.
Yes, in amongst the green, there's what looked like dead leaves.
Yes, and that's exactly what's happened, and some quite
very
large
high
ones.
up through there.
Look at that. So what we'll do, we'll just drive down to the bottom of the valley, and then I'll get you to squeeze in amongst the oak trees, and we'll just examine what's actually caused it and just investigate. But my feeling is it's more grey squirrel damage, and why I'm taking you to show you this is that it's a bit unusual for them to be attracted to 20-year-old trees that are 6, 7, 8, 9 inches through the trunks of them. We'll just choose.
25 years ago, this was just a
This
field,
was an
arable
field, growing barley, wheat, and sugar beet.
And the trees are all like 30 feet high now.
Yes, just see if I can choose as a little spot to squeeze through. I'm trying to be kind to you because there's a few patches of brambles here as well, and I think we can squeeze through here somewhere. That's what it looks like. Yeah, stop the car. Handbrake on. Rat is out.
Here we are into the delicious shade on this very sunny and warm day. It really is very dense, this woodland. We're having to bend down to get under the canopy, and we're looking for...
I'm just looking for one of these brown oaks now. You can see how dense the oak trees are. And, accidentally I'm standing right beside one and 2, and look, the bottom of the trunk to 5 feet, nearly 2 metres tall, is okay. Green foliage on, and when we look up through the canopy, Matthew, dead. A beautiful young oak tree killed by a small rodent called the grey squirrel. Look here.
Oh, about 6 foot up. It's been gnawed all the way round.
Yep. And that's the end of the tree. And the poor oak tree has said, I've been coppiced. So accidentally, look what I've done. I brought us to another one right beside it, a good 8 inches through the trunk. And what it's trying to do is to say, I've been coppiced, and I'm sending out lots of little shoots here. They're about 1 foot long and verdant green, but everything from 5 feet where the squirrel's perched on a branch, but it didn't stop. It gnawed the entire bark off up to the top. Look there, another one. Just the same. That one's a skeleton.
Of course, most of the oak trees we see in our countryside now predates the introduction of the grey squirrel, don't they?
Of course, and that's the whole worry of it, when introductions through really ignorance or just, wanting different species. I mean, the Duke of Bedford, I think it was, brought Muntjac into the UK, and I think he kept them at Woburn, but they were accidental escapes. And in the case of the grey squirrel, it was done deliberately to kind of increase biodiversity or just interest for country parks and large houses. You were quite somebody if you had species that...
I can see another one through there.
Yes, this is
stripped bare.
And just be careful because there's some low branches here, completely dead. I'll just make an avenue through.
Yeah, what a shame.
Look at that.
And if our oak trees never grow more than 20 years old, what's going to happen?
Look at that. And that one has been completely stripped very recently, Matthew. And it's just started to go brown at the top, but there's no hope for it. You couldn't, it's just pure white and smooth, not a tooth mark on it, just where the tree has tried to compensate and where the little branch, which is still green, is swollen to cover up the wound, but there's no flesh beneath the wound. It's been stripped off. So it's amazing the damage that they've done. And what's so unusual is they've come into this young woodland. The sap isn't as sugary as it is in the maples, the sycamore we looked at, but nevertheless the damage is astonishing. And because I don't control anything at the farm, I kind of stand back and let nature take its course. So I am extremely fortunate because probably a total of 50 of these young oaks has been affected so far by the grey squirrel. But I've probably got 5,000 oaks here, just in this area of woodland. They are sort of really dense. We're only 4 feet away and there's a perfect oak there, so far completely untouched.
So what you're saying is there ain't enough squirrels to completely wipe out?
Not at the moment, but grey squirrel numbers are increasing annually because it's difficult. There aren't a number of people to actually control them. Birth control pills for them are being tried and all sorts of remedies. So our trees are always under threat. They're under threat from mammals, rodents like the grey squirrel, under threat from diseases. Just turn around and look behind you. There's a lovely young ash sapling. In fact, there's 2 here, self-seeded, and absolutely bone dead. These are ash. Of course, it's High Ash Farm. Look, snap, snap, and snap. It's not a game of cards. It's a tragedy for these, and you can see the coloration where the fungal spores.
And this isn't squirrel, this is disease.
This is completely diseased. The bark's still on the tree, or was. It's now starting to peel off. That's not squirrel damage at all. And you can see where the fungal chalara, or chalara as it's called, has attacked the branch at exactly that point and then killed the twig immediately afterwards, and eventually the poor ash sapling's given up. So trees are really special and important to us in the countryside, and we have to learn to foster them and look after them. And so I'm a bit of a dilemma at my wit's end really to protect the rest of the oaks. Yeah. And from that question from Vicky, there's the mildew on the end of the oak leaves, but that's completely normal at this time of the year. And just look at that oak
and
beside
that
us.
Is not normal.
No.
The leaves are all brown like parchment.
Yes.
And they're curled up, and the tree is dead or dying.
Completely deceased, I'm afraid. Yeah. So if you came in here with a chainsaw and did that, I would be pretty cross with you. So you can imagine how I feel about the greys, which have been quite welcome here.
Would you? I mean, I've got a bit of spare time. A shilling a squirrel? Would you
tail?
Still be offering?
No, I have got a pair of sort of birds at the farm here which attack squirrels, and the only bit they don't eat is the tail. So maybe we should go round under their nest and collect the tails. They're goshawks, fearsome predators, much larger than a sparrowhawk, and they will prey on squirrels, so natural predation would be really very, very good indeed. But you can see I've got plenty of oak trees, and hopefully they'll be sufficient to withstand this sort of onslaught from the grey squirrel. There we are. Oh, another one here, beautiful young oak tree. Just started going round. Another one. Wherever we walk, there's more and more squirrel damage. So I think I've seen enough. I'm going to put my head in a cool bucket now.
Yeah, oh, Chris, this is, yes, very disappointing. But maybe one day the proper control of grey squirrels will be taken into hand. We'll see a few more red squirrels, and maybe a few of these younger oak trees will survive. It might not happen in our time, though, Chris, so we will see. We found some more shade. Rat's gone off for a sniff about, and we're sitting in the farm vehicle. And we've got quite a few cards and letters here. Those cards, Mr. Frisky, your birthday card for the first birthday of this podcast is magnificent. It's a tractor being driven by all the farm animals there, you see. And there's one of your geese.
Yes, look at that. And it says in the card, "Dear Chris Matthews, Sophie Anna, and of course Rat," and it is from Mr. Frisky. There we are, second mention.
And as you mentioned, here's funnily enough, a little card from the bees on the farm. To Chris, Matthew, Sophie and Anna, we only have little legs, but we made you this card to say thank you for our sumptuous menu in the High Ash Farm fields. You're helping to keep us alive. That's you, Chris.
Excellent, yes. Thank you, bees, wherever you all are.
Actually, we just saw a lot of hives, didn't we?
Yes, we did, in the successional woodland, and the honey has yet to be extracted from those. I think you've already had your first pound of high ash honey, but you should get some more in future weeks.
Now, here's one from Kathleen Robert Shaw, who says, failure to properly protect my patch of sprout and sprouting broccolis resulted in skeleton sprouts and caterpillars on the broccoli. To try to save the plants, I relocated many caterpillars, the whites, along with part-eaten leaves to a small heap. I hoped some would pupate, but that most would be food for other creatures. Why is there much wasp interest in this heap, though? Do the caterpillars produce a sticky, attractive residue? By the way, we've seen very few wasps and hornets this year.
Yes, this has been noted across the UK. It's something to do with the overwintering survival of the queens, both queen hornets and queen wasps. Because we had that long cold period, it kind of extended forcibly their hibernation period, and many of them had run out of steam by the time it was time to get out and about. The weather was inclement, to say the least. So those wasps will be attracted to the butterfly caterpillars, or even better, the pupa, the chrysalis, because they will predate them, particularly hornets. They will take the juices out of them, and so that's possibly what's happened there. But you're lucky if you've just seen a few wasps hanging around. That just shows there's probably a nest nearby.
There's more from Kathleen. She says, on our journey home to Suffolk from Scotland, we managed to take a wrong turn and ended up driving past High Ash Farm. It must be magnetism. But they were up in Orkney. Wonderful place to go on holiday. But they were being told about the potential issues that re-dried ragwort contaminating hay for horses. And they say, we're surprised to hear of wildlife bodies pulling ragwort from their beautifully, intentionally created wildflower meadows because they might get into a nearby hay crop.
Yes, and of course this is another one of those natural history dilemmas, because ragwort is the food plant for one of our most beautiful moths, the cinnabar moth, of course, which is brightly coloured, to advertise the fact that it's poisonous. It's got certain amounts of cyanide in the body fluids, and the caterpillars are equally flamboyant, if you like, black and orange or black and yellow stripes all the way. They really look like tiger's tails, it's their nickname. And so when you pull the ragwort, you can destroy the habitat for the caterpillars. But ragwort is a notifiable weed, and it has been since perhaps the 1930s with the early Ministry of Agriculture orders way back then. It's DEFRA responsible today, and if you are a landowner and you allow large amounts of ragwort to grow on your property, you can be asked to cut and remove it. And the reason is we were much more a pastoral area in the eastern side of the UK, and today more cattle and pastures in the west side of the UK, and as such we had more ragwort back then, and also cattle can eat it. It's mildly toxic for cattle. Sheep seem to be quite a bit of it with impunity, but remember the cattle, unless they're dairy cows, beef cattle and sheep, don't have a very long life, whereas ragwort can affect seriously the liver. It causes huge problems, particularly for horses, which have a long life. So if a horse imbibes lots of ragwort, it can take 2 to 3 years, maybe even a bit longer, to affect the liver to such an extent that the animal dies in agony. So that's why if you're getting hay from a supplier, you need to ensure that it's ragwort free, because once ragwort is cut and dried, it loses that kind of toxic oily taste that it has in the green state, and animals then will eat it. So it's really important. So up in Orkney there, where they're removing the ragwort from the wildflower fields, that's actually quite a responsible thing to do. You would like to think, why does the ragwort in the wildflower field affect anywhere else? Ragwort is like the thistles here beside us in this field. It's a pioneering species, Matthew, and it produces little plumes of seed at this time of the year, right at the beginning of September, and they float off in every direction. And if you've got arable pasture nearby, and it's quite in livestock intensive up there in Orkney, there's not much else you can do with the land, graze sheep mainly, and therefore you can contaminate a neighbour's pastures, and of course it's expensive to control it chemically, and it's damned hard work to pull it physically, I can tell you. That's why my hands are, well, best way to describe it is sandpaper, 2 sheets of sandpaper.
Well, talking of the pioneering spirit, let's go west, young man, to California. Californiae, Trinity Alps, in fact, and John Spink. John, thank you for your note. He's been reading about the coastal waters and indeed inland waterways in the UK. He said they're reported to be in a dreadful state due to mismanagement of sewage farms. And I'm curious to know how the rivers and waters in general are around your farm, Chris.
Yes, well, we look after them as best we can, because right underneath where we're sitting, Matthew, is a chalk aquifer. It's about 30 metres deep because we're parked up on top of a hill by some woodland. And just over there, where those Scots pine trees are, is one of Norfolk's largest underground abstraction plants for water, and it's extracting water well over 20,000 cubic metres a day at this time of the year. That's a metre square, twice the height of Mount Everest, to give you an idea. Colossal amount of water. Much of that goes to Norwich, which is just over there, about 1.5 miles away, and for all the villages south of Norwich. So we are really conscious. We're in something called a nitrate vulnerable zone, and that nitrates are one of the pollutants that get into drinking water and need to be taken out. It's expensive to take it out, so if you can get aquifers of high quality water, such as through the chalk, then you're on a winner. But remember, the population of the UK is increasing hugely. People in cities, urban conurbations, then there's a sewage treatment plant and everything goes down through the sewer. But out in the countryside, population's also increasing. There's a lot of house developments in these rural areas. There's no mains drainage, and you have something called a septic tank, and so all the effluent that comes from, and many of the new houses have more than one toilet, more than, there's ensuite bathrooms are quite normal now for your bedroom. And so we're producing and using more and more water, and it all has to be dealt with somehow. So as East Anglia's, we've got a pretty large coastal area around, there's actually out to sea discharges, and it can cause a problem out in the local swimming waters as well. But some of our rivers, sadly, because we have a lot of livestock production here in the eastern counties, particularly for poultry, and poultry manure gets in contact with water in a stream, it causes huge problems. So farmers right across the board, whether you're producing livestock or things like for silage, where the effluent, the juices come out of the grass, if that gets into water streams as well, it's a huge pollutant. Not only kills the sort of wildlife plants around the stream edges, but all the invertebrates in the water as well, and it travels a long while. But at High Ash Farm, we have crystal clear water running through the streams, and you know that because we have a particular little crustacean swimming about in there. They're called freshwater shrimps, and absolutely love it. And that's the sign of good quality water, which we have here. But because humanity is expanding at the rate it is, the world population as well, of course, and here in the UK, I think we're cruising up towards 80 million inhabitants before too long. It's going to be an even bigger problem than it is now. So it's one that's hard to address and expensive.
Well, we don't want to leave on a gloomy note, so I'll just ask you to mention Nigel Meek from Clench Wharton in Kings Lynn, who says, just a line to say how much I enjoy listening and learning with your Countryside podcast, Chris. With Matthew each week, keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Nigel. That's really kind of you, and we'll endeavour to keep going into our second year on the next podcast.
I'm feeling middle-aged now.
Oh, dear. Yes. No, I hope we have a long relationship, and it's certainly a great privilege to do the Countryside podcast each week.
Privilege and great fun as well.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm learning all the time.
We're always smiling.
Chris at countrysidepodcast.co.uk, and we'll look forward to your emails, and we'll be back again for another episode very soon.
Yes, it's the hottest part of the day. Look on the floor, on the grass, outside the car. Rat is fast asleep. Best way to spend the hottest part of the day.
This is a Soundyard production. Music is by Tom Harris.
Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. Our new service, Spoken Stories, is an incredible experience where we record the stories and voice of your loved one, which you can then hold on to forever.
It makes for an incredible gift, and anyone can make one. Take a listen to this. It beautifully captures the thoughts and feelings of life from a 6-year-old's perspective.
I'm 6 years old and I love running around. I can run very, very fast, but I'm even faster on my bike. That's why I love biking. It makes me feel energetic, and also I bike loads of places. I like doing sports like dodgeball. The people that are in charge in the world, well, I think that there should be no one in charge at all, so everyone's in charge so everyone's so there's no person that's in charge, so everyone is it's a bit more free. That's what I think. Well, what I try to change at the moment is global warming. It's when us humans litter, destroy the planet and all its nature. That's global warming. It makes me feel sad. And also, if us humans keep doing that, and that it could destroy the whole planet Earth, and then all of the human beings will be destroyed. I try to stop global warming. And also, in my coat pocket, I have a bit of Kit Kat litter I found on the floor once. I love the planet more than anything. Grown-ups should be stopping global warming, because grown-ups are more powerful than kids. But if kids can be more powerful than grown-ups, kids and grown-ups can work together and do it. Kids should be able to do the same things as grown-ups. They should have more rights. Well, I love myself because that I believe in a lot of things. That's what I love about myself. I like being a kid, but because when I'm a grown-up, I'm going to have my own kids because that's what I want. And also, I'm a bit worried to have kids. And I'm still going to be a kid for a long, long time. So I'm glad that's actually going to happen. I'm glad I'm going to stay a kid for a long time. I'm going to have kids because I want to know what it feels like to be a parent. I'm going to be a good parent.
Isn't that just gorgeous? If you'd like to find out more about recording a spoken story of your own, or you'd like to buy this as a present for someone, take a look at our website, www.soundyard.org/spoken stories, and take advantage of our introductory offer. Alternatively, you can get in touch via email, hello@soundyard.org.
And if the internet isn't an option, you can leave a message with your details on our landline number. It's 01603 273 899, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.